A very good evening to you, Mr. Maimane. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So, you've obviously been part of some of these talks. I'd like to hear from you how they've unfolded. Is it what you agreed upon or what you thought you'd agreed upon on?
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to fellow South Africans. I think when it's said and done, much of the work that has to be done needed to be done before the election results themselves. We anticipated way ahead of time in 2016 what would happen post-coalition so that we weren't found negotiating under pressure, A, and B, we needed a service delivery program that we could actually bank on, and ultimately then that's on the basis that you elect an executive. What's happened this time around is that an executive has been elected without a plan, which means that these negotiations have had very little to do with citizens, has got everything to do with party political posturing. I, as a South African, am glad that in some ways there's a change of government, in that it's important for voters to know the ANC can lose and has lost, but it's going to be crucial that we establish to what end. It's not just removing the ANC. At the end of the day, for citizens, there's a desperation for services, and best we get on with the business of delivering for people.
You tell me what is involved in terms of posturing maneuvers while you are in the midst of all of this, because as you heard Professor Friedman say, that he believes some of what has happened is unprincipled. The ANC, through its provincial secretary in Gauteng, believes this is also unprincipled gang behavior, as it describes it. You've just also alluded to some level of desperation in ousting the ANC before you actually come to formal agreement. So you may or may not be involved in some of these metros or council sittings, but what happens now? There's no formal agreement. How do you ensure that it is the electorate that comes out benefiting from this process?
Well, I think all of us as citizens need to call out what is the nature of these agreements, make them public. Secondly, I think that we need to decide on a pathway that will work between now and 2024. And I want to call upon all of these political parties. They need to make their agreements public. If they are not willing to do that, it will just confirm backhanded dealings, and these agreements don't just pertain only to who holds an executive. They must talk to who owns these municipal entities, the chairman of those, the deployment into key strategic areas. It can't be cadre deployment so that you can fund political projects. I'm afraid often what is one of the most difficult things to negotiate through in these times is not to use the municipality as a place where funding can be found for 2024 election campaign. As you can see, the difficulties that parties, some of them experience in this party funding bill. So we need to keep a vigilant eye on it. Otherwise, citizens are going to come third, if not forgotten in this whole conversation. And then lastly, I do think without a doubt, we need to notice, and remember, council has a program, and we'll be publishing how exactly council works from here so that citizens know. So that those city managers that are elected, who are actually meant to run cities, are not deployees of some political project, so that actually citizens have a control and a direct interest in the matter. That is what's vital coming up now. And then we need to have a genuine conversation that we don't repeat the same exercise in 2024. So I'm really looking forward to engaging the broader political, civic society organizations, etc., to make sure we charter a way towards 2024 that serves the people of this country.
Are we at a point of maturity as a country where parties that are at odds with each other can have an altruistic agreement that ultimately sticks to service delivery? You've been through this, arms have been twisted, and often for the wrong reasons.
Look, I think what's important is that we must realize as a country that this is a step in the right direction. I've always said coalitions are the future. One-party states have delivered state capture, so we don't want to go back there. And coalitions are an international trend. Whether you look at countries like Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and many arrangements have taken place in Africa. In fact, the ousting of the Kenya's liberation movement came through a coalition. So this is not anything new. We are toddlers, perhaps, in this journey, and so we need to learn how to take appropriate steps. So this is all normal. But we must brace ourselves that the next 2 years are going to be hard, like in the birth of any new child. It's going to be hard because they're learning how to walk and to dance with each other. I actually think that we've got global experience to look towards. I certainly have studied the subject in realizing that sometimes parties that work well together are parties that are not competing for the same vote and the same voter base, because every action doesn't mean vote winning. It actually means delivery of services. So these are some of the lessons that we've got to learn. We've got to change legislation so that 2024 doesn't become a similar show to this one.
I know when we last spoke, these are the points that you raised and why you said you were glad to be part of the independent candidates. What role can you see yourselves playing in this, particularly as you raise the need for us to have transparency about some of the agreements, whether loose or not, between the parties so that they can govern?
Accountability is the most fundamental role here. Coming up are two massive votes. The first is the IDP vote. That has to be voted for in all of these councils. And I'm urging all independent candidates and citizens who believe that the first thing they've got to do is make sure that the IDPs reflect the wish of the people. They're not written by some consultant. They're not written by the fact that there's some party that wants to do whatever it wants to do. Let's make sure that actually in the IDP those things are in place. Thirdly, the next vote that is most crucial is emanating from the IDP is the budget votes. And those should occur closer to about May or so. And when those happen, let the independents ensure that they use their votes to exert as much leverage that all services are delivered to people. That's the fight we've got to put on the table. And then we begin the cycle again for 2022, 2023. So I would urge that that has got to be the crucial role. And that's what we're asking people to play. Where we've entered into governments like in Cedarburg and in Knysna, we've asked them to do exactly the same thing to make sure that everything that they do is deliverable against the fact that there's a community at heart here. And local government is less political. It's about delivery of services.
Thank you so much for your time. Chief activist of One Movement South Africa, Musi Maimane.